the Last Minute Blues podcast with Alex Ferrario, Donny Fandango, and Jeremy Rutherford on your home of the St. Louis Blues, 101 ESPN.
It is the Last Minute Blues podcast. Donny Fandango in the Jeff Burton studio. To my left, the one and only Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN. Diagonal. That's what the word.
Were you going to say caddy corner?
I was going to say caddy corner.
I haven't heard anybody say caddy corner since like my aunt says it.
So you just coming in already?
You're going to use a caddy corner word. I got to throw it back at you.
Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. Gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about. We want to get to some emails, but there is a lot going on in the world of not only the Blues, but also the NHL. So we're going to kind of lead off there. And this was just announced just a few minutes ago before we started recording. And this is great freaking news for Blues fans that Steve Ott has signed a 2-year extension in Springfield to remain their head coach. And like we were kind of talking about a little bit off air, Alex, before you got here, JR and I, what a win-win situation for all parties concerned. You got Steve Ott that continues to, pump up his resume by being the head coach in Springfield. I'm going to pull this together at some point. And then also, too, you get Steve Ott teaching all of these great young players that we have down there for another couple years as well. Again, boys, this just feels like a win-win all the way around. And I'm just really stoked that we didn't lose Otter because I kind of had it in my mind that we would.
I was most surprised that it was a 2-year deal. I kind of assumed that it would just be an extra year to get one more year of experience. I mean, heck, you see some of these guys getting AHL jobs right now, and you think, like, Steve Ott's going to get a head coaching job at some point, but 2 years makes all the sense in the world. One, I mean, you could probably break that contract, I would imagine, if an NHL team came calling. But two, man, you look at it and say, we're going to give you 2 years of experience as a head coach. Now you've got your roster. You'll have a whole offseason, and he'll be at the training camp with the Blues before he goes to the Springfield Thunderbirds training camp. I mean, that's a massive win if you're Steve Ott because you're comfortable there, you know the organization, and you get 2 years of comfort to really hone in on your head coaching skills. But on the flip side of that, that's even bigger for the Blues. I mean, I forget who asked. I think maybe you asked this the last time we did the podcast. Somebody said, like, when was the last time the Blues had this much symmetry with their American Hockey League group? And boy, it's been a really long time. And now you've got a coach that you trust, that you know how he's going to work. He matches what Jim Montgomery wants to do, and to have that for 2 years in a system where you're still developing these guys. I mean, I would imagine by next year, a bulk of your draft picks that you've drafted and accumulated over these last couple of years, they're all going to be playing for either Steve Ott or Jim Montgomery, and that's massive for the Blues.
Yeah, first of all, you stole my word, symmetry. That was the one word I was going to pick up.
Yes!
And use that when I
made myself
and
sound
he sounded
smart.
so smart and saying, man,
but I couldn't come up with the word again. I said matching, so like symmetry gets canceled out.
I'll get mad at you about that in a minute. But, I think with, I was thinking 1 year, too. I think, you signed the 2-year deal, hoping that you have him for 2 more years. But in Steve Ott's mind, he's hoping that this year goes very well.
Yeah.
And that he's a head coach. You look at the hires around the league and the vacancies. Do we know if Steve Ott applied for the LA job? Maybe we'll find out when we talk to him here in a little bit. But you have LA, you have Vancouver. Vancouver seemed like a slam dunk with Manny Malhotra. And now you got 2 jobs open, Toronto and Edmonton. And I don't think either job was a situation where they were going to bring in a rookie coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Keith Pelly up there with, all the fire that he's been under.
In Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah. That, they weren't going to bring in a first-year guy.
Yeah. Well, then they're talking about Joe Pavelski, who's literally coaching his 15-year-old son's hockey team.
Yeah, so I shouldn't say that. Will Pavelski get the job? We'll see.
I doubt it.
But I think it's a situation where I don't know if they can, take a risky hire.
Yeah.
And I think with Edmonton, they were trying to get Bruce Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're down the Mike Babcock lane, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But
Yikes.
So if you're Steve Ott, you wanted a job this year. We talked to him. We know that. But I think these jobs are hard to get.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Blues are like, okay, here's a 2-year deal. Come back. Maybe you're just here a year. If you can get a job after that, great. We'll let you go. And if not, you're here for 2 years. So now to symmetry. How about symmetry?
Symmetry.
This is terrific. I mean, you got Alexander Steen coming in for the first year. Here's his former teammate. Pick up the phone, call down to Springfield, talk about how the guys are doing. They're on the same page in terms of what they're trying to teach the young players. Ott being an assistant coach for 9 years on this staff. So this is a great situation. And if it works out in the year that Ott leaves, then, hey, that's how this thing works.
I'm just really hoping that when he does get a head coaching job, it's in the Eastern Conference.
You don't want him close by?
I don't. I don't want to ever have that thing in my head where I go, God, I got to root against that
what
guy.
If it's
I don't want to do
Chicago,
it.
Donnie.
What a kick to the balls.
Oh man,
because they're going to get Stenberg and then
and then he brings Pete DeBoer on as an assistant coach.
Oh, it will bring up there will be no doubt who my least favorite team is in the history of sports at that particular time.
I'm sure it's happened, but I would like to talk to the person who did this, whether he, let's say he was a Blues player, or and the rivalry is the Blackhawks, and he had an opportunity later down the road to sign with the Blackhawks. Nope, no thanks. I can't go.
The rivalry goes that deep,
or a coaching situation, like let's just say that a coach had a rivalry with another team for years, Boston, Montreal, whatever. I think we've seen enough of those guys go on both sides of the fence that
didn't Julian do that?
Julian did.
Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, look at Jamal Mayers, Reed Lowe.
Yeah.
Look, Reed Lowe's beating up Blackhawks left and right, and then he's playing for them.
So. Well, hell, Joel Quenneville. Yeah. I mean, you were the coach for the Blues for the longest time, and then you go to Chicago and you win cups there. So it happens.
Yeah, and that whole Quenneville coach thing when he went on to win, you're as a Blues fan, we're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
That checks out exactly.
That was in the era of every Blues player that ever left the team would go on to win a Stanley Cup. My dad had an ongoing joke of like, who got traded this year? That team's going to win the Stanley Cup.
So I don't think Steve Ott's giving him a job just because it's the Blackhawks or something. Heck, he played for Detroit.
Yeah, absolutely so. And also, too, I hope wherever he goes, he is successful. He just seems really fantastic and was one of the best guests we've ever had. I mean, he was great. I want to do a couple little housekeeping things with the Blues, and then I want to bring up a couple NHL things. We'll take a break and we'll hit some emails. Blues signed goaltender Georgii Ramanov to a 2-year, 2-way contract. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but he was was between the pipes in Springfield when they went on this nice run. Yeah. Did he have a good year outside of that? Can you just kind of talk about him a bit?
No, tough regular season. Okay. And, the goaltending wasn't great in Springfield. They had Zherdev down there, and then Ramanov came in and basically replaced Ellis when the Blues lost Colton Ellis to Buffalo on waivers. And so he was kind of like a fill-in and, like I said, not a great regular season. So he did not start the first game of the playoffs. And then once they lost that game, they turned to Ramanov, and he was outstanding. Like, they had some good players in that playoff run, but he might have been their star. And so, yeah, are there questions about him coming back and how's he going to do in the regular season next year? Sure, but I think they saw enough in the playoffs that they didn't mind bringing him back in the situation that they're in.
And I think that kind of tells you, too, what their goal sending situation is. Like, I don't think they're going to re-sign Zarenko. Maybe they do.
Zarenko, sorry.
But with Romanov getting a 2-year deal and then they re-signed Will Cranley as well, I think that's your tandem next year in the American Hockey League. Now, maybe I'm wrong and maybe Zarenko gets one so that they have 3 guys, but they have the kid that's over in Sweden and they have the other goaltender that they love. Gotta love that one. See what I did there, Donnie?
I did.
And then they got the other guy that they acquired from the New York Islanders at the trade deadline. So they've got internal goaltending options. So I think Ramanov earned the #1 starting job for next year and honestly kind of puts himself as the #3 in terms of the depth chart for the Blues going into next season.
That was going to be my question. So if somebody gets hurt, Hofer, Bennington, is he the one that's going to most likely come up?
Yeah, just not a ton of experience. And so, like I said, it wasn't a great year for him in the American League.
Still a lot to prove.
So, depending on the length of an injury or the need here in St. Louis, I don't think you're bringing Ramanov up, for 2 months to start 8 games. I don't think that's a situation. If so, you'd have to bring somebody else in.
Got it. Real quick here, Blues signed Zach Dean and Dylan Peterson to 1-year, 2-way contracts. Dean was obviously out a good chunk of last season in the NHLPA's player assistance program. Guys, I want you to talk about both of those guys, kind of what you see moving forward with Dylan Peterson as well as Zach Dean.
I don't know where you stand on this one, JR, but like Zach Dean, it was good to see him back. He had a good return and he kind of built himself back up. I'll be fascinated to see what it looks like next year for him. I don't think he's ever going to fill that void of traded for Ivan Barbashev for so many Blues fans, but maybe he's a good piece for you. I think Dylan Peterson's probably the closer one to playing for the Blues next year because I mean, he's had back-to-back seasons to where he shows the ability to score goals. He's been really good. He's a physical force. I think that might be a guy that could play fourth line minutes next year. And like the internal competition on the fourth line to me is probably the most fascinating, because you'll have Walker, Toropchenko, and Finley. And then I think Kaskamaki is somebody that they want to see what it looks like. You've got Dylan Peterson. You've got Zach Dean. Like, that's the area where the Blues need a little bit more physicality and toughness on the fourth line. And I do think there's going to be some internal battles that take place. And I saw in your mailbag today that a league source told you that Dylan Dube is more than likely probably going to sign with the Blues. So that's another guy that's probably going to fight for those spots. So it's good to see Dean back. I think Peterson's probably further along in terms of the potential to be a part of the Blues, but all of these guys are going to be in that internal competition at training camp to try and steal some roster spots.
Yeah, a couple weeks after Steve Ott got the job in Springfield, I had a chance to talk to Dylan Peterson and, just about his game, and he felt like it's really coming along. I think he's 24 years old. He plays a physical style. He had a big fight in the playoff run that kind of changed the one game a little bit, and so I agree with Alex. I think that there's a possibility to see Dylan Peterson up here maybe competing for a spot on that fourth line. I don't know if it'll be out of training camp, but maybe at some point in the season. And then Zach Dean, the biggest thing with him is I'm just glad that we're seeing him on the ice.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy who went to the player assistance program. He was out a while, and then he came in and was a good player for them down the stretch and into the playoffs. So is he a player that Blues fans sit here and say, he's going to be here soon, can't wait to see him, automatically going to be here? Probably not. But if he keeps working hard, keeps going the right direction, I think he'll get a call up at some point too. And, just to your point on Dube, league source said very likely that Dube signs with St. Louis, and you got to believe that's a chance to compete on the NHL roster.
Now, and I don't mean to ask a silly question here, guys, but do you think for him that will be a one-year deal? Is that a one-way contract at this point, or will it still be a two-way contract for Dube?
It's a good question. I think with the way he produced and probably a handful of teams after him, he would probably had enough leverage to get a one-way deal, especially with his 300-plus NHL games. And, and he's produced in the past. And I think, it's always, you got to be careful saying this, but, the group of players have moved past the case after being acquitted. And we've seen Carter Hart have success in Vegas. And now you see Dylan Dube on the verge of signing the contract. So I think it would be a one-way deal. And in terms of the length, you would have to believe it'd be 1 or 2 years.
All right, good deal. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, come back. Let's talk very quickly some things going on around the NHL, and then we'll hit your emails. Segment number 2, Last Minute Blues podcast, coming your way next. All right, guys, so a couple things here, NHL related, and then we're going to hit some more emails. You can always email us at lmbp@1057thepoint.com. Now, listen, I'm going to be very, very honest with you. It is not every year that the NHL postseason is into the Stanley Cup finals, and I'm still paying attention. I'll just be very, very honest with you. A lot of times I've moved on to baseball. I'm already dreaming of my Buffalo Bills.
Understandable.
I'm just not there. That said, this year I have watched more of the playoffs than I ever have in my life, and this freaking NHL final is insane. I understand that there are... It's just unbelievable, these games. How have you guys just enjoyed kind of getting to watch? Who do you think ends up friggin' winning this damn thing?
I think it's going to be Carolina. I'm trying to pull up the stat that I was texting with somebody about last night. So it's the first time in Cup history that each team has scored 3 or more goals in the first 4 games. Think about that for a minute. Like, typically, and I didn't expect that at all. I thought this was going to be a stingy defensive game for how well Carolina has played. But you think of the storylines that we've gotten out of this. You had a Mitch Marner hat trick. You had 2 come from behind games where they trailed a total of 6 goals for the Carolina Hurricanes. You've had a goaltending change for a guy that didn't even make his NHL debut until midway through this season.
He can't even be considered a rookie of the year because he's so old.
27 years old, who has just grinded it through the minor leagues, and now they might go back to Frederik Andersen, and you've got a series that's tied up at 2-2. Like, that to me is the best part about this. And to your point of like being engaged, last year I kind of fell out. I don't like it's when it's the repetitive cup to where it's the same teams again. It's like, I already saw this. I want fresh blood. I think it was game 3. I was going to the movie with my dad that night. We were going to a late show because I wanted the game to be over, and it was 4-0. So I'm driving and I'm listening to it on my 101 ESPN, and they get 3 goals in what was it, like 2 minutes? I'm like, what the hell? And then they tied it, and the movie was about to start. So we're watching a movie, and I have my phone like this. So I'm watching double overtime while the movie is happening, and I had to silently like get frustrated because I'm rooting for Carolina. That's how invested I am in this cup, and I think people didn't expect this at all because it's a Carolina market and a Carolina team that's boring. Vegas has Carter Hart, where there's some people that aren't happy about that. They made the John Tortorella decision. Like, it's not like the fireworks Stanley Cup final, but oh my God, has this thing been probably the most entertaining in a long time.
Vegas just doesn't go away at all. And not only do they not go away, they end up winning a lot of these games. And so when you turn on the game and it's 3-0 Carolina or whatever, you have to stay. You have to stay tuned in. And then furthermore, with that, Frederik Andersen, he was the guy who I probably should have given it to Marner, but before the series, the Athletic says, "Hey, who's your Conn Smythe?" And okay, Carolina is going to win. Frederik Andersen's going to be the Conn Smythe, and then he doesn't even dress last night. And then we read the story where he needs a break, and they felt like he needs a break. He needs to sit out, not even dress as the backup. So, like Alex said, we'll see if we see Andersen back in the series. But it's just been phenomenal, and the ratings are through the roof. Yeah. I personally, like Alex, I'm pulling for Carolina. Just the way they've pushed for 4 and 5, 6 years now. Rod Brindamore. I love Rod. I like his line yesterday. Have you had a chance to just enjoy this whatsoever? He said, no, way too much pressure.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. So this is great. I'm with you. Even though this is our job, there are Stanley Cup finals where you find yourself tuning out a little bit, and you can't with this one.
Man, not at all. All right. So Carolina, I just want to be clear. I'm rooting for Carolina, but I think Vegas is going to win. I just feel like they're the dog that never, ever goes away.
Yeah.
And again, I don't like saying that. I don't like those douchebags, even in the slightest, but there's just something about them that they just don't let go.
They don't, but I feel like no doubt this thing's going to 7. Carolina has struggled on home ice. Compared to being on the road, they play much better. I think this thing goes to 7, and I think what this is going to come down to is it's going to come down to somebody being the hero in overtime. This is going to be a tight game. Both sides, though, have goaltending problems. Man. Carter Hart can make the save every once in a while. Somebody made the comp that he's got a lot of Grant Fuhr in him to where he'll give up goals, but the ones that matter most, he's not going to give up. And that was true in the first couple of games, and then that kind of faded away. Giving up 3 goals that quickly is not a good sign for Vegas. But on the flip side of it, how can you trust Carolina when they had to? They can say he was exhausted, but man, this is the Stanley Cup final. I don't know how you just all of a sudden turn and be like, oh, okay, we'll go back to him. Everything will be fine.
All right. So a couple things here real quick, and then we'll move on to emails. Dylan Larkin has requested a trade from the Detroit Red Wings. He submitted his 3-team list.
I think, was there a Vegas on that list?
Vegas on the list, Florida on the list, and Minnesota on the list. I think that there is a lot of debate as to which one of these teams has the most in which to give back to Detroit. I just find it to be a very, very interesting situation. Completely, as far as the organization goes, as far as Larkin goes. Do you guys think that 3-team list is going to have to...
First of all, before you give Florida the thumbs down, Matthew Tkachuk is living in a $6 million house on the water and drives his golf cart to practice. So I think that any player around the league...
God, that's awesome.
No, all of that is awesome. I'm just saying from the fan perspective and me not rooting for the Panthers or for Vegas and those guys winning all the time. Yeah, that's what I mean for
the Vegas one. For me,
it was surprising when you saw the 3 teams, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of debate, and we can talk about it here, is a lot of people saying that if you request a trade, your no-trade list of teams should go out the window.
I agree with that.
Once you request a trade, then the team, okay, we'll trade you to it. Obviously, people wouldn't request trades if that were the case. Yeah. You could get traded.
I agree with that, though. We negotiated the no trade because we want you to feel the security of staying here. We are not going to trade you. But if you come to me and say, I want to be traded. Cool, man. 31 teams are available for you to be traded to.
Here's the thing, though. We remember here in St. Louis, Vladimir Tarasenko asked for a trade. What was it, 2 years later? Mm-hmm. They ended up trading him to New York. And so they don't have to move him, but it does put Detroit in just a horrible position. I mean, they can't get over the hump. It's been 10 years since the playoffs. Everybody's questioning the Yzerman plan. And then, now your captain, your star player, wants out. And what are you going to be able to get for him? Like, there's articles popping up around the league, like, okay, this team. Like, I don't know that you can get value for a guy who wants out and he's only providing a 3-team list. Like, if you're those 3 teams, what are you giving up for Dylan Larkin?
Yeah. And just what do they have? Like, does Florida even have the assets to be able to flip for a guy like that?
So here's my tinfoil. I mean, they got the 9th overall pick. So, like, you could do that. But if I'm Detroit, and you got cap space you got to make work. Here's my tinfoil theory on it. I think this was Dylan Larkin's side really trying to push to go to Minnesota. To where it's like, yeah, I'll go to Florida or Vegas, but good luck making that deal with them.
That's a good point, yeah.
They don't have cap space. They don't have assets you want. I really want to go to Minnesota to play with Matt Boldy and Quinn Hughes and Bill Guerin. So send me to Minnesota. That's the team I want to go to. These 2 teams, good luck trying to make a deal. Now, I think that list is going to expand. And if I'm Steve Yzerman, I'm going to go to him with the no trade and be like, we're not trading you. You can sit if you want, but we're not trading you unless that list expands, which I know is a tough thing to do with your captain. But I mean, like, you can't give me a 3-team list and tell me this is where you're going to go. There's going to have to be more teams on that, because if you're Detroit, this may work out for you in the long run. Like, maybe you need to just reset this Yzer plan because it has not worked. But man, like, you can't go into a rebuild if you're the Detroit Red Wings. So, like, you need to get assets that make you good. They have to do what the Blues have tried to do.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we're going to trade you, but we're going to try and get assets that make this faster for us. But it's hard to do that when you don't have a first-round draft pick this year. It's hard to do that when you're probably not getting the best return back. And also, he's a 30-year-old centerman. So how much do people want to pay for it?
I think we should just all be thankful that we're not Detroit Red Wing fans right now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and obviously we didn't even really talk about it, but, like, Dylan is a Michigan guy, went to University of Michigan, is from there, and is saying, yep, enough. That has got to be an absolute kick to the stones.
And doesn't even want to have a conversation with a Detroit Red Wings legend in Steve Yzerman.
Beautiful new arena just a few years ago. Probably one of the best looking in the league.
It's gorgeous. I saw Depeche Mode there.
Yeah, gorgeous.
This guy, name drop.
And you're right, Alex. Like, you can't do a rebuild there because you're already 10 years, no playoffs. I mean, if you do a rebuild now, you're talking minimum 6 more years. And they've got other good players, good parts. So it's not like you got to just fold in the towel because you're trading this guy. I mean, if you can get a good return from it, you can stay out of the rebuild. But it just puts their whole offseason in a crazy situation.
And in the last week, this has been the story that has completely blown my mind. The chance, the opportunity that Mike Babcock could be on the doorstep of coaching the Edmonton Oilers. Guys, listen, I understand that a lot of times if you play for a guy, you might not necessarily like them to a certain extent. But the way that some former players talk about Babcock, it is with it is a level up of dislike and of hate. How can you guys see this working in Edmonton? I am just so floored by all of this and just don't see it working. What do you guys think? And it's if it even still happens.
I don't think it's going to work. And the part for me is I think people are like surprised by this. I mean, I'm not surprised. This is a desperate move for a desperate organization that needs Connor McDavid to stay. And I mean, to think that Connor McDavid's not having a part of this conversation is just not smart. Like, he's a part of this. But like, I saw Bob Stauffer, who is the play-by-play man for the Oilers, basically say, like, look, this is their guy from top down. They want Mike Babcock. The part that I don't understand is Mike Babcock hasn't had success since 2010 when he was the coach at Detroit. Like, he was fine in Toronto, but they never got past the first round. Is that the precedent you want to set with Edmonton of like, hey man, we're going to get a guy who hasn't gotten past the first round since 2009. Like, this is different from Joel Quenneville, to where he had some dirty past with the Chicago Blackhawks stuff, but you knew he could still coach because he did it 3 years prior with Florida. This guy not only has a dirty past, but mistreating players, which, like I saw Mike Commodore say, like, he's going to treat McDavid and Draisaitl like gods. It's everybody else he's going to treat like trash. But then on top of it, he hasn't even been behind a bench in almost 10 years, and he hasn't made it past the first round in almost 15 years. So I think this is going to massively fail for Edmonton. But if you're them, you go name recognition, right? Like, you can't get Bruce Cassidy. Who else is out there that makes you get excited that he's your new head coach. It's a guy that's won multiple Stanley Cups, even if he hasn't won it since he had 5 Hall of Famers on his roster.
Right. And a lot of times when a team loses in the playoffs and maybe things get a little stale, you think it's the coach. So we've got to go find this perfect motivating coach to get this team over the edge. In Edmonton, it hasn't necessarily been the coach. It's been the goaltending. And if you want to point the finger at anything, it's been the GM with the moves, allowing Holloway and Broberg to get away and then not coming up with a better goaltending solution. Like, your answer to replace Stuart Skinner is Tristan Jarry. Like, so
Stuart Skinner 2.0.
Yeah. And so it's not a situation where, okay, we got the horses, we got the goaltending, we got the roster we need to win a cup. We just need that coach. Let's bring in the hard ass Mike Babcock and he can get this team over the edge. That's not it. And so, I have all the questions that Alex asked about that situation, and I just don't know why Edmonton thinks this is the answer.
You know he's going to come in and demand to see Evander Kane's cell phone.
Jeez.
The first guy he's going to is, give me your cell phone. Let's see what we got.
Just the whole idea of that still blows my mind.
And it does. And listen, so Jeff Rimmer in Columbus made the point. He said, look, this was one player. Mm-hmm. This was a young player. And it was a veteran who got pissed off about the young player having to, turn over his phone. Let's, for 1 second, say, okay, that's nothing. It's minimal. It shouldn't have grown to the level it grew to. That's fine. But that's the kind of stuff that pops up with Mike every single place he goes.
And that was in Columbus. Yeah, now go to one of the meccas in Canada for a hockey team.
Yeah, when you had Mitch Marner, hey, Mitch, tell me the 5 guys you think don't work hard. That was
I forgot about that too.
So there's things like that. Even though this phone thing might be small, might be minimal, and got blown out of proportion, there's just those things everywhere. And is that what Edmonton needs with, 2 years of McDavid left?
No. I mean, this just all looks like it's getting worse and worse. And like you say about the general manager, I know nothing about hockey. And when they made the Skinner Jarry thing, I think I might have even came to your office the next day to be like, what? Yeah. Like, please make sense of this to me.
I looked at the stats and I'm like, you're trading for Stuart Skinner. Just with less playoff experience.
You just did the same.
Good stuff.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and then we're going to apologize for not reading any of your emails on an email exclusive, on a podcast that was supposed to be email exclusive. We're going to get to them.
Let's do it.
Well, all right, let's do this. Maybe we'll get to one. All right, last segment, Last Minute Blues podcast coming your way next. We are back. Final segment, Last Minute Blues podcast. Let's hit a couple emails here. This one coming from Caleb. Hey, Donny and company. I like how he says that.
I don't like that.
I don't like it.
I'm already on a show where it's called BK and Ferrario, and I got small tech. Now I got Donny and company.
All right, I understand.
Damn it.
Let's see. My name is Caleb Kreider. I'm 24 years old. I live in the east side of the Mississippi in a small town called New Athens, Illinois. You may or may not have heard of our little village, but you may have once before, because it's where a not so famous Cardinal manager was born and raised, named Whitey Herzog. Ever heard of him? Yes, we get it. New Athens. We listen to baseball games.
I call it New Athens. Though.
We've listened to baseball games on KMOX to hear them say that 84,000 times.
He called it Donny and company, and now he's chirping the guy saying,
we get it. See, this is why, Caleb, it should be called Alex and company.
It's probably a pretty good idea. Anyway, not really a question, but just wanted to say the Blues need to trade up in this draft. If rumors ring true about San Jose even remotely being interested in moving down from the second position, Doug and Alex should be doing everything in their power to secure this draft slot. I'm not saying trade the farm, but if it's possible to move, say, a Parayko, a Jiricek, or 1, 2, or 3 first-rounders, then this is such a layup. You already have the older brother. They need to go out and get the younger Stenberg. I've never seen a more blatant, obvious move in my entire life. He could be your Crosby, your Barkov, or your Pasta. Get it done, Doug. That's from Caleb.
Well, go ahead.
Can I stick my neck out for 1 second?
Whoa, okay.
I would not trade Adam Jiricek for the number 2.
That to me is a no-go. You can't trade your young defenseman that you've needed in your organization.
Isn't it like wouldn't it be like almost a lateral trade?
I think it makes you worse.
It's just Jiricek's upside at the position he plays is through the roof.
Would you trade Alex Pietrangelo in his prime for the second overall pick?
No, and Stenberg can be a really, really, really good player. And I'm not disagreeing with Caleb that they shouldn't trade up to number 2. I'm just saying, be careful what you trade.
That's what I was going to say. Let's shine the light on JR here for a minute, because I saw on your mailbag today that it said said, make a prediction of a trade, and you said Kyrou to San Jose. You're on the clock, JR.
Yeah. I tried to go through the list of teams that he might accept a trade to, and he's not going to Seattle. I think that he would go to the New York Islanders, but they have a guy there, Braden Shen, who might have some influence on whether, that trade could happen. And so, the team that came to mind is San Jose. Not that it's a destination, but because of what they're building there. If you're Jordan Kyrou, can I go play with Celebrini and all these guys? I'd jump on that in a heartbeat.
To the email, though, I don't think it is necessary to trade up for the second overall pick. I mean, I've changed my decision on this like so many times, which might still happen.
Twice during this answer.
That's true. Twice. I don't think, first of all, Stenberg is Crosby or Pasternak. I think we need to pump the brakes on that. Otherwise, he would be going number 1 overall, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. As much as it would be cool to have the Stenberg brothers together, I just think you're giving up way too much to try and get that pick. Whereas, man, with 11 and 15, it really feels like you're going to get 2 really good players.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm going to mortgage that just to go out there and get one guy that might be great. He might also just be fine. And do you want to take the chance of that to where I could have 2 fine players versus 1 fine? Plus, you don't need wingers. As much as I'd love an Ivar Stenberg and an Otto Stenberg playing together, man, you need center help. And there's a lot of centers that could fall to you at number 11, whether it's Lawrence or Vigio Bjork. And then you've got defensemen that you could take. So I've swayed a lot. I think I'm to the point now where it's like, you know what, if you make a trade up to 9 to get the center that you want. Don't trade everything to get to the second overall pick, which it might not matter.
That makes a lot of sense. Hey, Alex,
yeah.
Do you want to make JR really uncomfortable with the last email of the day?
Yeah. Can I stare at him while you read it?
Yes, but I just want to say before we start reading this, it's overwhelmingly positive, but I know that it's going to make JR feel uncomfortable.
So uncomfortable.
So I super look forward to reading it.
Tarsoff, Zane, zoom in on JR's face on this one as we read.
It says, and this is from Glenn. Glenn says, hey, gang, really looking forward to the live draft show in a few weeks. Wanted to ask this question of JR while acknowledging it could be a bit of a tricky subject. As a transplanted Blues Cards fan here in Tampa for the last 5 years, I have been forever grateful to have JR's work available to me in The Athletic. Along with JR, Katie Woo's work as the beat writer for the Cardinals was fantastic as well. Before she left, was asked to leave. As a transplanted Blues Cards fan here in Tampa for the last 5 years, I have become even more grateful as I experience every day what it's like to live in a market with no local writer of any type for The Athletic, which is mind-boggling considering the enormous success of the market with the Lightning, Bucks, and the Rays. With that in mind, excuse me, what can we do as Blues fans to ensure that JR continues to stay in good graces at The Athletic and to continue to show the bean counters that the Blues are worthy of a beat writer? We all know that attention is the coin of the realm, and views, downloads, clicks, and comments are modern currency. I ask that knowing full well that JR could find something better at any time, but as a fan base, what are the things that we can do to make sure that the New York Times bosses continue to see the Blues as a team worthy of a beat writer when so many other teams' markets don't have them or are having them taken away and not required? Thanks. That's from Glenn in Tampa. Let's go Blues.
Man, well, first of all, thanks, Mom, for writing into Jeremy and Company.
Jeremy and Company, come on, guys. I thought we decided on this.
Appreciate it. Yeah. No, I mean, I can't even be more sincere. Thank you so much. Quick answer to the question is, just keep reading. I mean, the comments are great. The subscription to The Athletic is great. It's phenomenal. But please just keep reading, because the way that we get evaluated is what kind of attention do our articles receive. And I have to tell you, I started at The Athletic in 2017, and I have a metrics page that shows us how Blues fans respond to stories, and the numbers are through the roof, especially in relation to a lot of other markets. And that, listen, please don't, rebuttal this. It's not because of anything that I do. It's because of Blues fans. You could put a person in here covering the team tomorrow, and I know you guys, give yourself some credit. I'm saying that you put somebody in this seat and Blues fans will respond. They love the coverage. They want the coverage. They want the in-depth stuff. They want the features. They want that stuff. I try to do my best, and I appreciate anybody that reads it. That's all, that
you hear that, Donny? Keep reading.
Absolutely.
Don't just skip over his articles. Keep reading.
Glenn reads, Donny doesn't.
I don't know where this got started, but I don't read JR's stuff, but every time we talk about it, it makes me uncomfortable as hell.
You just made me uncomfortable, so why can't I make you uncomfortable?
And I'm just sitting over.
I guess you're right. Turn about. It's fair play or whatever. All right. So, guys, let's wrap it up. JR has an exciting trip to Omaha that he has to take care of today. And then Alex and I have to pretend to be radio guys here in a little while's time. All right. We got a stack still of emails, though. We'll go through those on the next podcast. Yep. I mean, there's going to be a time where things kind of dry up. So we're going to be able to catch up on these emails, but keep sending them our way. LMBP at 1057
Especially you, Glenn.
Especially you,
Glenn.
For Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, I'm Donny Fandango. Thank you as always for listening and watching. And as always, let's go Blues.
Thanks for tuning into the Last Minute Blues podcast on your home for Blues hockey, 101 ESPN.